hate to be the one to bring the bad news. I've been managing Lavoy Finicum's YouTube page for a couple days or so. Unfortunately, they saying Lavoy Finicum was shot and killed. He was on his knees with his hands up, and they shot him 3 times, and he got him. And so I just everybody that's subscribed probably should be aware of that. So a good man died today.
This is the deed to my ranch, right here. It's recorded in Mojave County. That's the county which my ranch is in, here in Arizona. And here is the description of my spring, along with my other assets and the description of my ranch. I have half interest in Coyote Springs and Pipeline, period. So I have half interest in that spring. That spring flows about 500 gallons a day. Goes into a 100,000 gallon tank, and so in a year's time there's roughly about 200,000 gallons that flows out of there. So I have 100,000 gallons of water that I have purchased, that I own, off that spring a year. Well, here you go. Here's a letter. Again, they claim to have exclusive legislative ability and power whatsoever. That means that they can write and create laws and back it up and by the rangers, or take us into their court. Now remember, I don't recognize them. I don't recognize their right to own and control it. But here they have a letter sent. It says, as discussed, the two-weep little tuck-up little two-weep holds half interest in White Springs. Now that's correct. Water during the permitted season of use from October 16th to May 15th, 7 months. After this time, the entire flow will be allocated to the two-weep allotment, which is theirs. Let me explain that. Environmental group came in here by the name of Grand Canyon Trust, purchased up that ranch, then gave it to the BLM. BLM now has, they claim not only that, they claim the grazing rights and everything with it, plus the water. So now I have a deed for half that water. They're now sending me a letter saying, no, you don't have half the water. You only have a quarter of the water, a little more than a quarter of water. Hello everyone, this is Lavoy Finicum. This is the second day I've been out here trying to get my waters running on my tanks. This here is my second tank I was telling you about in my first video. As you can see, I'm full to the brim. It's a large tank, goes down subterranean ways, and this is my most crucial tank here. And you'll see how this works. It's an apron. It's called a trick tank. The rains come, gathers on this tarp here, this apron, and then it flows down, and it will come in here, right there, and runs into my holding tank. Been working on it all day. My best guess is that they've dumped in some bentonite or dry concrete, and it's flowed down in, it's plugged my lines. Hello everyone, this is Lavoy Finicum. I think I'm pretty upset this evening. I've been going since 5 this morning. I'm headed out, taking a load of cows out to my winter range. I'll be back sometime tonight in the dark. But I've been following what's happening over in Bend, Oregon with that ranching family over there, the Hammond family. And I'm pretty upset with what the BLM has done to them. Actually, I'm really angry. They had a prescribed burn that was allowed, got off onto 100 acres, burned 100 acres of BLM. Just rangeland, you know, 100 acres. He'll come back just as green next year as ever. They threw him in jail. They fined him tremendous amount of fines, and now it looks like they're facing 5 more years in prison. These are real lives. These are real people. And by dang, I'm angry about it. America, how long are we going to put up with this type of stuff? What you did to that Hammond family up in Bend, Oregon, you sent them to jail. And then they served their time, they got out of jail, and you charged them as terrorists because they're doing a controlled burned 100 acres of what you call your lands of brush. 7 years ago. The land is now more fruitful, more feed on it now because of what they did. You convicted them on a terrorism charge.
There's a 55-year-old rancher from Arizona named Lavoy Finicum. He's got 11 children, he's Mormon, and he came here because he's upset about federal control of vast stretches of land in the West. He says he's not going to pull a gun on them, but if a gun is drawn on him, he's going to point back. And he quote, loves freedom too much to ever be in a cell.
He's coming out of the tarp. Let's take a look at that.
That's Lavoy Finicum right there.
The information may or may not be accurate, but it appeared to be highly credible that 5 warrants were issued for our arrest for me, for Ammon Bundy, for Ryan Bundy, and I'm not sure for the other 2, and by the FBI, federal warrants. And so if that is true, if that is the case, I do not want the FBI, federal agents, have to go running around in the dark, kicking in doors looking for me, okay?
You know, it's very sad, Joe, the way that the whole situation has not only played out, but the way it has been portrayed. Governor Brown of Oregon has a lot to answer for, and her letter to Loretta Lynch and, to vicariously to Barack Obama was disingenuous at best and inflammatory and cowardice, if you'll just allow me to make that classification. I spent 3.5 days with the people of Burns. I didn't stay at a hotel. I stayed with families. And they actually asked me to come out there and teach. And I spent 2 whole days, 2 whole evenings teaching. We had a 2-hour training session on Monday night and a 2-hour training session on Tuesday night. And we started off by laying the groundwork of the sovereignty of the states, sort of like what we do at the 10th Amendment dinners. And then we went the second day and talked about specific overreaches and specific remedies. And I'm going to tell you what, Joe, if you walk through Burns, there is absolutely no indication that anything is going on at the refuge. As a matter of fact, the refuge is 30 miles away. The people in the community it's a small rural town. They're going to restaurants, they're buying groceries. I mean, you don't even know anything's going on until you see the FBI, the way they have completely overreacted to this whole situation. They've got big fences and concrete burns all around the Harney County Courthouse. They have a presence there, like they're occupying Baghdad. I mean, they look like military personnel. And the only source of fear in Burns is the fear that is being invoked by the federal government.
Have you felt the change in the tone and tenor of the feds out there? We certainly have. We used to could walk up to them and talk with the FBI agents in a friendly manner, unarmed and stuff, but the tenor has changed. They have become more hardened, and when they step out of their vehicles, now they're stepping out with their rifles, and they're not willing to engage in just friendly dialogue. And then I'm assuming that you're aware of all the extra vehicles that they're bringing in and the increase in manpower that they're ramping up. And we're saying, why the rattling of the saber? Why, when we're so far away from anybody out here in the middle of nowhere, why are you ramping it up? Why do you fly your planes over nonstop? And why do you have your drones? Because they're droning this now. And they're actually flying their photographer planes. They're doing all the things They're doing all the things that shows that they want to take some kinetic action against us. And we're saying, why be so unfriendly? Why be so threatening? Why are you threatening lethal force when we're so far away?
There was a meeting in John Day that evening with the sheriff of Grant County. Anyway, they had a big bunch of ranchers because the sheriff over there is very constitutional, and they wanted to hear the presentation that Ammon Bundy gives and Ryan Payne and Ryan Bundy about our rights and how they're created and how they're protected by the Constitution itself and what the Constitution is about. And they had this meeting set up for that evening. Normally I don't go, but the guys were all getting ready to go, and they had planned it out. Everybody was going at separate times in separate individual cars. At that time, we were going to send the family and some others ahead and get prepared. And as they were getting into their van to drive, they had everybody in except the oldest daughter because she was still getting ready. And they needed to take off, so we said, okay, go ahead and go. Well, I was originally not going, but Lavoy was driving his truck, and Ryan Payne was in the passenger side. Ryan Bundy was in the back, and they were taking Victoria, this daughter, the 18-year-old. And we had another person that was supposed to be going to film it, but we couldn't find him at the last minute. And so I said, okay, I will go and do that. And then, because I was preparing to go home. So I jumped in the truck behind the passenger seat, and we headed out for John Day. When we had traveled for about a half an hour, and behind us was supposed to come in about 15 minutes or so, was going to be the second vehicle, which had Mark McConnell in. He was driving, and Buddha and Ammon Bundy. Anyway, they were in a different vehicle, and they were supposed to be coming behind us. During that time, I was busy on the phone. I was calling people in John Day, some of our friends, saying, you ought to come. I was in communication with a lot of people at that time. And we're going through the hills. Now, I don't know how far it is, and I don't even know which direction we're going, because I do not geographically know Oregon. We got to this snowed valley, and I looked up, and they said, oh, look at all those vehicles that were coming out of the side canyon. There were a whole bunch of them. And they started filing out and falling in behind the Jeep. And at that time, I think, is when Lavoy and Ryan realized that it was going to be an ambush, that it was a setup. And they got a little bit nervous because as they came out, they came up on quickly and flipped on their light. All I could see was flashing lights. So I turned around and I could see that they were kind of coming up on top of the Jeep, and the Jeep stopped, and we kept going because Lavoy said, we have to get to John Day because we're meeting the sheriff. So he was speeding up. And then the police cars, anyway, I could just see the lights coming up quickly upon us. And Ryan Payne says, Lavoy, you need to pull over. Just pull over. Lavoy said, no, we got to go see the sheriff. And finally, Ryan Payne said, you got to pull over. You got to stop. And so Lavoy slowed down and stopped, and Ryan Payne rolled down the window. Now, he's in the passenger side, and he puts both his arms out the window to show, I guess, that he doesn't have any weapons or whatever, but he puts his hands out, and he starts to put his head out, and a bullet comes by, and I thought it hit him in the arm. He jumps back really fast into the car. I thought it hit the bracelet on his arm, but it didn't. It hit the metal between the mirror and the door, and that freaked us out.
They didn't give you an opportunity to surrender. They didn't get on their PA system and said, okay, we're going to order you out of the car.
Anything.
So the first thing they did was to shoot at you.
Shoot at him. Yep, shoot at Ryan. Lavoy was going to take off, and Ryan said, no, they're making business. We better stop. Just wait. And so he gets out, and he's yelling at him. There's women in the car, so he jumps out of the car. Then he's standing there, and he yells back at whoever's behind us, and he says, there's women in the car. And we hear them say, if the women want out, let them out. Well, my door was locked, and Victoria was sitting next to me. And she's just a young girl, just barely 18. And she's freaked out. Well, I'm kind of freaked out, too, because they're shooting already, and we haven't even done any of it,
We were just driving down the road, and I fell asleep on Ryan Bundy's shoulder. And then I woke up to them saying, oh, there's vehicles behind us. The vehicle that Ammon Bundy was in was being pulled over. And Lavoy, we saw a lot of vehicles behind us. They were black, and some of them had lights. And Lavoy was concerned for our safety. And he was like, I don't think it's safe to stop here. He didn't know what was going on. None of us did. And then the vehicle pulled up behind us, and Lavoy slowed down a little bit. Ryan Payne, who was in the vehicle, said, I don't know if it's worth it. And he thought Lavoy should slow down. And so Lavoy eventually slowed down and stopped right in the middle of the road. And he rolled his window down. And we could hear the men from the vehicles behind us, and they were shouting to turn the vehicle off and put his hands out the window. And he put his hands and his head out the window immediately, but he didn't turn the vehicle off, and he started to tell them that he wasn't going to turn the vehicle off, that we were going to talk to the sheriff, which was Sheriff Glenn Palmer in Grant County. He told them that if they were going to shoot him, they had a clear shot of his head was out of the vehicle, and he said, so you can shoot me, but if you shoot me, you'll have an innocent man's blood on your hands. We're going to see the sheriff, you need to leave us alone. We could see there were red lasers on our body in the back seat, and I was afraid that they would shoot us. And so I shouted from my seat, please don't shoot us. And Ryan Payne, who was in the front, he shouted, there's women in the vehicle. The men behind us shouted that the women needed to get out of the vehicle, but we were being aimed at. And so Ryan Payne said he would ask them how we were supposed to exit the vehicle. And so he put his hands and his head out the window. And as he was shouting that there were women in the vehicle that we were going to get out, and he was about to ask them how, they shot at him. A shot was fired at Ryan, and he ducked back inside the vehicle. And he had done nothing except for put his hands and his head out of his window. So I was like, oh, I'm not getting out. They're going to shoot. Shauna Cox decided to stay with me. And Lavoy kept telling them, you guys need to stand down. We're going to talk to the sheriff. And Ryan Payne kept talking to them, and he decided he was going to get out of the vehicle. So he told them he was going to get out, and they told him how to get out, and he did that. And then we were talking in the back seat, and Shauna asked Lavoy how much further we had to go, and he said that if we could make it for 50 miles, that we would be safe into Grant County. So he told us he was going to drive, and we all got down on the floorboard. Shauna, me, and Ryan Bundy, who were in the back, we all got down on the floor. And all this time, Shauna and Ryan were videotaping. Shauna with the camera and her phone, and Ryan Bundy with his phone. But the FBI has possession of all three of those cameras now.
So, in law enforcement, for police to use deadly force needs to be authorized. And some of the justifications for deadly force is a fleeing violent felon. These guys are not violent. Now, the government's going to say, well, they had guns, so that could be seen as violent. They didn't shoot anybody. They didn't commit any violent felonies. They weren't robbing. They weren't looting. They weren't kicking. Some dumbass on Facebook compared this to Michael Brown, where he got shot, hands up, don't shoot. I'm like, this has nothing to do. Michael Brown attacked a cop, beat him, tried to take his gun, and committed strong-arm robbery, then went out and beat up a cop. And then he was shot. Somebody said this is the same thing, he's just white. This is not the same thing. These guys are known. They've been here for 20-something days. The FBI and police agencies knew who they were. They have them identified. If you read the affidavit, they know who they are. They've been watching their videos. They know exactly what they look like. They have pictures of them. They have their driver's license information. They have these people identified. You can't use a fleeing felon if the person isn't a violent fleeing felon, and he will possibly create a danger to others if he gets away. These guys weren't trying to get away. They're hanging out at the refuge. They were talking to the FBI. Now they're going to a town meeting. They're driving in a car. Did they commit a crime? Yeah. They took off from the cops here on a traffic stop. When they took off, they committed a crime, a failure to yield. It's a misdemeanor. It's not a felony, and it's not a violent felony. And again, the thing to remember, if I was arguing this case on why the cops didn't have any exigency to shoot this guy, you know who they were. You had their picture. You were following them. You were doing surveillance. You knew where they were to stop them. You had superior forces. Yeah, I mean, there's over 20, 30 cops here. They got 8, 10 vehicles with 4 or 5 cops in each vehicle. The cops got to pick and choose when and how this was going to go down. They did not, get caught in a back alley going to a loud music call and were ambushed and didn't know how many people were there and they had to fight their way out. That would be an exigency to where if they shot somebody that was unarmed, it would be more reasonable. And remember, all these actions of cops are judged on a reasonable standard. So the cops picked a place, they had superior force, it's daylight, there's 4 feet of snow around, it ain't like nobody's going to get out of the car and run, and you've already got the suspects ID'd, and they have not committed any violent acts upon people. They haven't assaulted anybody, they haven't raped, robbed, they haven't done anything. They've trespassed on a stinking refuge for freaking plants that the federal government has made into some special place. The guy that was shot was a dad. He was a good tax-paying American who flew the flag, who was doing good things for the country, who was trying to save the country.
And I looked up, and on the top of Lavoy's hat, there is a red laser pointed to the top of his head, because I can see him in the back seat. And he saw that, and he stuck his hand out and his head out, and we were going to John Day to meet with the sheriff. He said, "Go ahead, shoot me then," because he could see the laser on his head in the mirror. And then he said that 3 or 4 times. "We're going to see the sheriff." And then he said to us, "If you want to get out, get out." And Victoria says, "I'm not getting out." And my mother instinct kicks in, and I said, "I'm not leaving her. I'm not getting out." So he says, "Okay," and so he just decided to gun it, and we just slid down the floorboard. Victoria leaned over on me, and Ryan was down, and we tried at that moment to dial out 911, anybody we knew, trying to call. We had nobody, none of us had any service. Suddenly the service was all gone, like they already knew. They either shut it off or knew that spot had absolutely no service, because we couldn't call one single anything. We had no service, and I had just barely been on the phone, so I knew that it had just cut off. So I immediately grabbed my camera, because Ryan turned on his phone, and he's talking into his phone saying what's going on, I don't know if he's videoing or exactly how he's doing it, but he's recording what's happening. I said, "How far do you think we can get before they shoot the tires out? How far do we have to go?" And he said, "We have to go 50 miles.
This has been a really sad week for me, and the last couple of days especially, with the execution-style murder of Lavoy Finicum. And I just watched the FBI footage and have come to the conclusion that this is a result that was strategically planned. From the stop, a bunch of men, armed men, tactically armed men, pointing guns at Lavoy's truck, his daughter, and his friend. And this pressure cooker situation created a rabbit scenario from the sheer pressure. He was pulled over for no reason. I still haven't heard what crimes he was suspected of to get pulled over in the first place. But it doesn't really matter. If he was trespassing, they should have sent an officer immediately up to his window. The police here created this standoff before it was even a standoff. They pull you over, point guns at you, and expect you to do nothing? You corner a tiger and what? Wait for the tiger to attack? There's a real good reason almost 4 minutes were cut out of the primary video that I've been seeing going around on the internet, and that's because taking out that almost 4 minutes takes out 4 minutes of that pressure cooker environment that Lavoy was in. Okay, that's important. It's important to know that, okay? So I'm putting it out there. Now, Lavoy was forced to rabbit because he was afraid for himself. Nobody was approaching his vehicle. Nobody was accusing him of committing crimes. Nobody said he was speeding. Nobody said he was trespassing. They just created this standoff. Well, we're just going to sit here and point guns at you until you get nervous enough to drive away.
So Lavoy decided to drive, and we all got down, and he started driving. We kind of popped up because we didn't hear any shots. Sean had said maybe they would shoot the tires out, but we didn't hear shots right away, so we popped up, and we kind of looked back to see where the vehicle was, and we could see that they were gaining on us, so we told Lavoy they're catching up. So we all got back down, and then all of a sudden we went around a curve, and there was a roadblock there. And I didn't see the roadblock. We just felt Lavoy swerve and hit the snowbank. And as soon as we hit that snowbank, bullets started flying at the vehicle from the front and the back. I didn't know at the time that Lavoy was hit, but I believe that he was now, because I was told later that there was blood where he got out of the vehicle at his door.
I guess we came around the corner. I'm not really sure, but all I know is all of a sudden the truck hits this slush. And I don't know if he hit the brakes or if he was just swerving exactly, but this big spray of snow and ice came up. to the side over on the right side of us, and he swerves over to the left, and then now he's going over into the snowbank. At that point, I could see the vehicles barricading across the road, and he's trying to go around.
See these cars on the road? That's considered an unlawful roadblock. You give a person no way to go. So the person had two choices. He could have went off the road, or he could have ran into your vehicles, and then you would have shot and killed him because you're going to say, officer safety, he tried to kill us. You can't, as an officer of the law, you can't create the exigency. These cops created the exigency when they blocked the stinking roadway with their vehicles, and they gave the driver no escape path. That's why they have spike strips. That's why you blow the tires, so they can stop safely. You created a much more dangerous situation for the occupants of the vehicle and for the officers in those cars, whoever the dumbasses were that blocked the stinking roadway. What the hell what did you expect my clients to do? Did you know who they were? Yeah, were they going to get away? What, you expected them to get out and run in 14 feet of snow? Where are they going to go? You got a drone in the air and you got 30, 40 cops. You've got superior numbers, at least 5 to 1. Where is your fear and exigency that you think you need to ram your cars into it, block the roadway, force this guy into the snow, and then end up shooting a guy?
So let's talk about what happened then and when Lavoy decided to exit the vehicle.
Well, at that point, as soon as that vehicle stopped, he flung open the door and he jumped out of the vehicle. And the snow was deep, and he throws his hands wide open, and he runs trying to get through the snow, and he's got his hands out, and he's yelling, "Just shoot me then, just shoot me, just shoot me then." And I could not understand why he was doing that. And since that day, I have come to understand a little bit more, because I can't do his thinking for him. But he has a number of daughters, and I really believe that he had intention to draw the fire away from us because they had lasers all over the place and started shooting.
Did you have lasers on your body?
Absolutely. They had lasers all over us, and we were freaking out because they were shooting the truck.
Let me stop you for a second, Shauna. Let me stop you just for a second.
Yeah.
Are you saying at the point he got out of the vehicle, they were already firing upon the vehicle?
They started firing immediately.
When you came to a stop in that snowbank, is that when they started to fire again?
I think he jumped out first, and then they began to fire. We couldn't get up because we were getting blasted with bullets, and lasers were every place in the car, and they were shooting everything. The passenger window got blown out, and his door was still open. And Ryan, now I couldn't see him after he left my camera because I'm panning over there, but I'm down low and they're kind of in front of me, so I can't see it as well. But Victoria would get up and I'd say, "Oh, get down," and she was trying to see him, and she said, "They shot him, they shot him." And Ryan said, "They shot him, and they shot him again." And Ryan says he's dead. But the bullets never stopped. They kept coming. They kept shooting the vehicle. We were pinned. We couldn't get up. It was like we were not supposed to get out of that.
As soon as the truck came to a stop, Lavoy opened his door and gets out with his hands in the air and started walking toward the back and away from the vehicle. And he was shouting, "If you're going to shoot, then just shoot me then. Just shoot me then." And he just kept saying that over and over. And I was watching him from the back, and so was Ryan Bundy. He was just walking with his hands up, and then they engaged him, and he went down. They shot at him, and he went down. We ducked immediately as soon as we heard those shots, and we saw him go down. And we're like, "Oh my God, they shot it! They shot him!"
Toward a pocket on the left inside portion of his jacket. He did have a loaded 9mm semi-automatic handgun in that pocket.
So a lot of times witnesses don't see things correctly. Mm-hmm. The FBI released some video. Have you seen this video yet?
I don't think I have.
Can I show you? Have you take a look at this video?
So he had his hand up. Look at his hands. His hands are in the air.
Right. And this is, see him right there? That's him. What the FBI is saying is that he specifically reached for something in his left pocket twice.
I can't say if he was reaching for a weapon or not.
I don't know. It looks pretty clear.
Hey, watch.
Watch.
When his arms go down, they're still flailing. They're not reaching. Watch.
So that to you does not look like he's reaching across his
and
body into his left pocket?
No.
So usually if officers recover a loaded weapon in an area where they see you reach, that's justifiable force. In this case, do you see it as justifiable force?
I don't. I never see him in that video reach for it. I hope that justice is done because he didn't deserve that. His family did not deserve that. He has 13 kids, 22 grandchildren, and they didn't deserve this.
You almost got shot.
Yeah,
and you're still willing to be a part of a protest in the future?
It's worth it. If I lose my life for the future of America, it's worth it.
What I'm seeing from the video of this is that when the vehicle went into the snow, the vehicle's immobilized. It's not going anywhere. You've got snow pushed up to the top of the windows on the curbside of the vehicle. The vehicle's stuck. It's not going anywhere. It appears to me that Lavoy is exiting the vehicle with typical commands. Get out of the vehicle, your arms. The snow is at least a foot deep, 2 feet deep. He's not going to be running. He's complying. He's putting his arms up. And when he puts his arms up, you do see that officer in the lower right go into a typical combat police academy stance. And it appears that could be a moment of pow, ouch, and then he turns and he gets shot again from the other officer. As we go back and look at the briefing from the FBI, they said that he had a semi-automatic weapon in his pant. Lavoy never carried a semi-automatic. He only carried a Colt revolver, and he only used a pistol belt or a shoulder rig. And if you're in a vehicle, you're not going to have any type of large weapon stuck in your waistband as you're driving. It's just not going to happen.
Somebody sent this to me from someone's Facebook account. Barbara Davis says, well, Lavoy Finicum's body is home now. I'm absolutely sickened. It was shot 9 times. And we had the FBI agent said, well, how many times did you guys shoot at Lavoy and the car? Oh, I would say it's in single digits. Well, they shot Lavoy 9 times. There will be no open casket. The FBI shot him in the face. Right after it happened, I put out a call for the serial number off the 9mm gun, the pistol the FBI claims that he had in his pocket. The Pacific Patriots Network just sent me an email back. The 9mm came back stolen 2 years ago. The FBI planted the gun on him, serial number 54119868. You need to look that up. He had his own gun. Lavoy Finicum is not the kind of guy who'd be going around in black markets buying an illegal gun. He had perfectly good rights to own his own gun. He left his own gun back at the refuge center. So that looks very suspicious to me. There's another riddle here, and that's the riddle of the riddled car. Why won't they show us the number of shots in that car? We'll be right back.
Hello again. My name's Gabe Zolna. I tried to do a little bit of Googling. I wanted to see if I could find anything about an autopsy report on Finicum. It appears that there isn't one. And what is being reported is that he's going to be put to rest in Utah. Now, we have seen autopsy reports in the past. We saw them on Michael Brown. When he was shot, they showed us the autopsy reports. They showed us where the bullets hit Michael Brown. I believe we also saw autopsy reports on 1 or 2 other high-profile shootings. The one from the shooting that took place in Florida with George Zimmerman and Trayvon Martin. I believe we saw autopsy reports on where those bullets hit him as well. I don't think we're going to see any autopsy reports on Finicum. You know why? From what's been reported, he was shot 9 times. That would be considered, I think, to be overkill. Lavoy Finicum didn't deserve what happened to him. And if we had a true, honest Department of Justice, there would be a full investigation on the actions of the FBI, if it was in fact the FBI that conducted that assassination. Do you not find it odd that there's no autopsy? You know what it would show? It would show that he was shot in his left hip area, he was shot in the frontal area, and he was shot in the back. Multiple times, according to what's been reported. I don't know, folks. You know what I think. You have an idea as to why I think what I think. We all saw what we saw. We saw Lavoy Finicum with his hands raised like this because he was shot in his left hip. He grabbed his hip. He was shot in the front. shot in the back, then who knows how many times he was shot when he was on the ground. Don't you think the American people have a right to know? Why did we see the other autopsy reports on Michael Brown and on Trayvon Martin? Don't you think it's a little odd? I do.
anytime there's any type of real police action where they anticipate that they may have gunfire, they're going to have a response crew coming. They're going to have paramedics, ambulance, somebody nearby. That's telling me that they're anticipating having to use that sniper. They're anticipating having to do a takedown without any chance of recovery. Lavoy did go down to the ground. Nobody approached him. If you watch closely, you can still see that he was moving. That could have been muscles, or he could have actually still been alive. But nobody approached him to see, okay, is he still alive? Okay, let's give him some medical attention. Why would you have that type of firepower and having somebody in a sniper position to do a takeout unless you intended for that person to go down permanently? I would call this nothing short of murder by a police officer.
I'm sitting there next to that passenger window down. We're praying. We're praying as hard as we can to protect us, to save us. I'm looking up at the window next to my head, and there are bullets or whatever they hit. 5 times they hit that window, and it never broke. I don't know if it was because of the angle, or I praise the Lord, because I say He was protecting us because we were praying so hard to save us.
Let me ask you, how many times do you think they shot at the vehicle, if you were to guess, and how long did this assault go on after Lavoy was shot?
Oh, hundreds of bullets, hundreds. They didn't stop. I mean, there was a laser on her knee, and I'd grab her knee and move it. There was that one on his hat, and we'd push her. You know, we were just dodging the lasers. And they just kept shooting, and then they started shooting some weird things in that were sending smoke, and they burned our eyes and our nose and our, our faces. Anyway, it was awful. I don't know how long it was. I mean, in that situation, I can't tell time. The only way I could tell you is if you had my camera and you could see how long I was videoing. That's all I can tell you.
How did the shooting stop, and then they took you into custody? Let's talk about that.
Victoria had just finished EMT school 2 days before that. She was screaming out the window, "Let me help him, let me help him." But see, they didn't answer when she did that. And then she really was upset because they killed him. And she says, "Let me cover his body. I'm an EMT, I'm an EMT." And she was screaming. It was definitely that they had no intention to let us out of there. So we started screaming together. She was screaming, "Stop, stop." And I was really upset. And I said, "Stop it right now, just stop." And finally they heard us, I guess. I have no idea why they stopped. But I'm telling you that they stopped. And then they said, "Send the man out." And at that time, Ryan said, "I've been hit in the shoulder." And we looked, and sure enough, he had been hit in the right shoulder, and he was bleeding. and Victoria wanted to take care of it, but they were saying, get out of the car, so he came out with his hands up and back out, and they took him, and then they tell the next one to get out, so she gets out with her hands up, and of course they arrested her, or took her. And then I came out. I had to drop my camera and my phone and all my notebooks. And I came out with my hands up, and that because the truck's kind of a slant, so we all came out the same back door. And as I got out, I was right behind Victoria, and I noticed that the truck tire was still spinning. And we look over there, and there's Lavoy laying dead on the snow. Now, what was really odd with that was because he went out facing them, and when we saw him, his back, he was laying with his back down and his face up, which didn't make sense. And his left hand was still out. His knees were still buried in the snow. And until I saw the FBI video yesterday, it made no sense to me. Why would he be facing up like that? He was obviously dead. His hat was still on. He had his glasses on. But as we were walking, we also saw all these men coming out from behind the trees. There were all these men had rifles and hats on, had like little binoculars on them. They were all behind all these trees. And in my guess, I would guess about 24 of them maybe. I'm guessing, but there was a number of them. They took us over and set us on a road and put handcuffs on us. And as I was coming out with my hands up, they yelled at me and said, who else is in the vehicle? I said, no one. Nobody else is in the vehicle. They asked me that 3 or 4 times. Nobody. I'm the last one. There's nobody in there. As soon as they got me to the road and put the cuffs on me, they opened fire and started riddling that truck again. And
trying to kill anyone that might be behind, yeah.
I guess, I don't know, but they just riddled it, and they broke the window that I was sitting next to. So now that window's blown out. They had, up to that time, they hadn't.
Well, this was a song that we felt inspired to write together. It came within a matter of about a half hour when we knew that our dad was standing for freedom and that his life was being threatened as the FBI was putting more and more pressure out there. We felt to stand as his daughters and share what we've learned about freedom.
Are you going to agree? Our freedoms are waning and we'll lose our liberty. Slipping one by one until there's nothing left to see. Are you willing to stand with me? Are you just going to let it be? The ranchers are first, but brother, next it may be me. We all stand together or we'll hang separately. Are you going to the tree? Are you willing to be free? It won't get any easier to regain lost liberty. Strange things are happening in this land that once was free. So brother, I ask you, are you going to stand by me?